I'm David Mayu, Catholic Campus Minister for the Diocese of Charlotte to the Asheville area. Today I want to talk to you about a reflection of St. John Henry Cardinal Newman on the universal call to holiness and the means to achieve it. Now, St. John Henry Cardinal Newman is the universal patron of Catholic Campus Ministry, and so is dear to my heart, and I ask for his intercession daily to do my duties well, and that our efforts might be fruitful on the university's campuses where we serve. And during this time of quarantine, I've been taking the opportunity to delve a little more into his writings. And while doing so, while going through the collection known as his Meditations and Devotions, I ran across this piece called A Short Road to Perfection. And I love it. I love it because it contains everything that I love about the Catholic Church. The first part being that it's rooted in the Eucharist, it's rooted in the love of Christ. The second part is that it reflects the Church's universal call to holiness. The truth taught that whether you have been consecrated into holy orders, whether you are a member of religious and consecrated life, whether you are a lay person, whether you are married or single, every single person is called to be a saint. And every day you should be praying to God to help make you a saint. Help make me a saint. Help make me a saint. And John Henry Newman, in this meditation that I'm going to talk about, helps us do just that. Now, this meditation is called A Short Road to Perfection. And I want to talk about the name a little bit. First of all, it's short, not in that it's not going to take a lifetime of striving for holiness and a total surrender of God to achieve holiness, to become a saint. But because when you think about it in the way he talks about it, it doesn't take you long to see that it's reasonable and true. The second thing is that word perfect, because perfection is a word that can cause anxiety. And John Henry Newman up front says perfection is a word that has an ordinary meaning. It just means it's a quality of a thing that is as it ought to be, without flaw and without any unnecessary additions. And so in terms of living a perfect life, he's saying just that it is as it ought to be, without flaws, by which we would point mostly to sin, but without any unnecessary additions as well. And what he reflects upon in this meditation is the idea that among so many of the Desert Fathers and Mothers, among so many of the saints, it is said that if we wish to be perfect, we have nothing more to do than to perform the ordinary duties of the day well. And so we can immediately see how this would be applied to us universally. Every person, no matter what their station in life, has certain duties to fulfill. And he says that if we have those, first of all, oriented toward God, and then striving to achieve them well, that's very practical, it's very reasonable, and it's achievable in that by asking for God's grace, and with God's grace, it's something we can aim for, we can desire, and that we can do. Now, for students, most of whom are who I minister to, these duties, according to that particular station, are going to be lived according to the student life, that you are going to study nightly your topics, your classes, that you are going to give good attention to your lectures and to your readings, that you are going to fulfill your deadlines and work toward your exam dates and your quiz dates. Syllabuses are generally very clear, and you know what's expected of you, and to meet those expectations. But also in a greater Christian sense, and John Henry Newman would speak to this idea that you are at the university to seek truth, and that in seeking truth, this is going to lead you to the one who says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And thus to be a student is to vigorously pursue truth, and that's your calling as a student. Now, there's universal duties as Christians that we're called to do. We're called to love God and love neighbor. We are called to strive after virtue. We're called to pray, to meditate, to participate in the sacraments. And John Henry Newman gives us a very specific list of practical ways that every person can start to fulfill those duties. And I want to share that list with you because I think it's such a great little list. So the first, do not lie in bed beyond the due time of rising. Set an alarm, get up when it goes off. You know the time that you need to wake, to get the duties of the day done well. Set an alarm, get up at that time. Second, immediately after you rise, give your first thoughts to God. Now, in the previous video I talked a little bit about the morning offering. And I think this would be a perfect way to do just what St. John is asking us to do. As soon as you rise, get down on your knees next to your bed, make a morning offering to God, orient your day toward His will, and you'll be doing just that. Make a good visit to the Blessed Sacrament. Now, this is one of the things I like about this list. This one's very specific and concrete. Make a visit to the Blessed Sacrament. But it's very open in how one might do that. That might include making it to a daily Mass. It might mean going to a holy hour of adoration. It might mean 5 minutes dropping by church in front of the tabernacle and communing spiritually with God. Now, in this time of quarantine, that might be a little difficult. Those particular ways might be difficult to do. But in that previous video on the morning offering, I also talked about an act of spiritual communion. One can still lift one's minds and heart to the holy sacrifice of the Mass being offered throughout the world, and thus visit the real presence of Christ spiritually. God willing, we'll soon be able to do it in our parishes and our churches soon. But for now, we can still do that with our hearts and minds. Say the Angelus devoutly. Now, the Angelus is a short prayer, taking no longer than 5 minutes. That's an adoration of the Incarnation and a meditation upon that moment when the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary to announce the incarnation of our Lord. It's traditionally done at morning, noon, and evening, and every day we sign on to our virtual chapel using Google Meet as Catholic Campus Ministry and pray the Angelus together. So I think John Henry Newman would be proud of us. We're well on our way to fulfilling that one. Eat and drink to God's glory. Pray a blessing of the meal before and after all your meals. St. Paul urges us all to do everything with thanksgiving, including eating. And so do that. Make your eating mindful. And I think when it says eat and drink to God's glory, he doesn't mention this, but that would also include fulfilling our fasting. Make your Friday fasting, make your Lenten fasting. Make that a part of your practices so that when you do eat, you eat and drink to God's glory. Say the rosary well. I don't know what more you could add to that. Say a rosary daily and do it well. Spend time with Our Lady, meditating upon the life of Christ. And this will further you down the road to perfection. Be recollected. Now, recollection is an idea when it's used specifically in the Catholic context. It means knowing the presence of God in one's mind and heart. And so it's this idea that throughout the day, you practice the presence of God, as Brother Lawrence calls it in his short little book. Do that at all times. Be aware of God's presence and practice that, knowing that presence throughout the day. Keep out bad thoughts. Guard one's heart. Start paying attention to your thoughts when you have, anger is a good example. If you get angry, start meditating upon what was going on when I got angry. How do I start acting once something causes me to be angry? And can I stop those? And get earlier and earlier. How can I stop myself from being angry? Or for all things, just keep out those bad thoughts. Notice where they come from. Nip them in the bud as soon as they start appearing. Make your evening meditation well. This is another way that could be really flexible. I prefer Lectio Divina, this idea of spending at least 15 minutes with the Holy Scriptures. I prefer the readings for the daily Mass. and making Lectio Divina, that ancient practice of the church, part of your meditation. But this could be doing a rosary meditatively. This could be doing the Stations of the Cross. This could be doing any form of Christian meditation that really raises all the mental faculties to God. Examine yourself daily. Doing a daily examination, whether according to a Ignatian examen, an examination of conscience, but taking that time each day to recall your day, to think about how you connected with God, the ways where we didn't do as well as we ought, and making a firm intention to do better the next day. Important tool on the road to perfection. And then go to bed in good time. If you're going to be rising at a certain hour in order to get things done, go to bed at a reasonable hour so that you get plenty of sleep. 7 hours is probably a good, solid amount of sleep. And truly, it's probably the first and the last. Getting up at a reasonable hour and going to bed at a reasonable hour that I find students seem to have the most trouble with. And it's not just the spiritual life. All writings on how to be a good college student, how to live your life well, talk about this need for sleep and this need for regularity in your sleep cycle. So make that a firm part. The last thing that I want to speak to is that John Henry Newman, in laying out this very practical, short road to perfection, cautions that it's not enough for us to think about it. It's not enough for us to desire it. We have to aim for that perfection and then do it. And so as we're in Holy Week, as we're continuing to move through the Easter celebration, as you have this time set apart in our quarantine, why not take some of these means of achieving perfection that St. John lays out for us and start doing them? And I hope you'll join us for our daily Angelus. Make that a part of your daily road. You can find the link on our website at ashevilleccm.com. And I hope you'll continue to join us for more meditations and devotions here on our Catholic Campus Ministry YouTube channel. Thank you, and God bless.